Let's get it! 580 Sports Talk on a hump day afternoon in the capital city. So good to be with you for the next 3 hours on the sports voice of Kansas. 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online, worldwide at 580WIBW.com, and in moving picture form, live in living color on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, also on Facebook at WIBW News. I am Dan Lucero. Brendan Dworzinski is here. Spencer Dupuis will be along in a bit. We are so glad that you are with us here on this Wednesday afternoon. We look forward to spending the next 3 hours talking sports with you. And there is a lot to get to, a lot of college basketball to get to today. This may be our most college basketball forward edition of 580 Sports Talk of the season so far, because we've got a K-State game to talk about, another tough loss for Jerome Tang's Wildcats, and we'll get there. We'll also preview the big one at Hilton Coliseum tonight. Brendan, this is the first Big 12 game of this season that has felt like an event. This is the first one that has felt like the big game. Wednesday night, Hilton Coliseum, Ames, Iowa. KU, Iowa State, both teams in the top 10. And a huge game for the Big 12 title race.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that entirely. It's kind of funny that Baylor, Arizona was not that. You would think those two programs, what they've been, that would be that kind of headline. That game sucked, by the way. Not even competitive until the final 5 minutes. That was last night. But yeah, this one feels like, oh yeah, this is Big 12 basketball. Honestly, a shame this was not 8 p.m. Big Monday. That's what this should have been. That is really the only negative, though. Weird to have this game on a Wednesday, but excited for it. I am leaning Iowa State. I think KU can win, but this is the first time TJ Otzelberger's team has actually played well offensively. The metrics really like their offense. I think they're 6th in offense, 8th in defense, something like that, maybe vice versa. Going to be an uphill battle. Going to be a tough one. But yeah, I mean, this is what you play Big 12 basketball for, so you get these kind of matchups, and I'm excited for it. Should be a fun one tonight.
Iowa State, a 5-point favorite, according to Prairie Band Sportsbook. The total, 143.5. Hammer that under.
Under.
Hammer that under. KU, something like 13-1 to the under this year.
I just have a really hard time seeing this game being a shootout. I think, like, if I'm thinking of the most likely outcomes, I think KU has a game where it just can't make shots and Iowa State runs away late, but KU wouldn't get enough to help out with that over. I think the best way for KU to win is to honestly keep this game in the mud, which is really funny when you're talking about playing Iowa State, that you want to drag them into the mud. Usually it's vice versa. Iowa State tries to win those games. But again, they can score a little bit this year. They actually are efficient offensively. I think the lower scoring this game is, the better it is for Kansas.
We will have lots more to say about tonight's top 10 showdown, number 2 versus number 9 in the country at Hilton Coliseum tonight as we go along in the show. We'll also react to last night's K-State Texas Tech game. Wildcats fall 61-57. They do not score for the final 5 minutes and 50 seconds of the game. If I had like a new friend that had never watched basketball, like an alien had arrived from a distant planet.
The alien test. Yeah.
Yes, show me your traditions. Show me sports. And I said, all right, I introduce you to basketball. And if I showed that alien Saturday's KU Cincinnati game and last night's Kansas State Texas Tech game, I would understand if that alien would be like, yeah, what else you got? I'm good off this basketball you speak of.
Yeah, I'll pass.
I wonder if I even like the sport anymore. Honest to God. Those are the last 2 basketball games like I really sat down and watched. And I don't even know how much I like the sport anymore after that. But
yeah, it's not bad for the same reasons, but this K-State offense has ridiculously bad Bruce Weber era vibes. Like, they're just running crap. Just every time down the floor, it's just crap.
That's very bold of you to assume they're running anything.
Well, there it is. Like, it's just dumpster ball.
Yeah.
It's gross.
Look, there are a lot of teams that I watch across the country, and when things are not going well for them, I think, do they have plays? Like, there are a lot of teams that are like that. And Kansas State certainly falls into that category. The hell of it is, they ran a great play with like 2.5 minutes left to get Brendan Housen a look from 3 that would have given them the lead, which you could have said about any one of their last like 10 possessions that they could have taken the lead. And they ran a great play to get him free off an elevator screen on the left wing for a 3. And it was halfway down, and the rim spit it out. And K-State didn't run another play. It felt like the rest of the game. Like, we tried one. Everything was there but the end product. But we tried. It didn't work.
I have some thoughts about this offense we'll get to.
Yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit more about that K-State Tech game, including whether what we saw last night as far as who was on the floor and who was not might be a sign that the end goal for this season has changed a little bit for Jerome Tang and his K-State coaching staff. That is the theory of one Tim Fitzgerald to GoPowerCat.com. And what a lovely coincidence. Tim Fitzgerald will join us today for what we call the Wildcat Wrap-Up. Fitz will join us bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. We'll get his thoughts on where K-State basketball stands and if they might be turning a corner and looking ahead to the 2025-26 season already in a way that I think is really defensible at this stage. Also, Kansas State is not alone in being a team that invested a lot in the transfer portal and is starting to wonder if maybe that wasn't money particularly well spent. Jeff Goodman pointing out on Twitter, I think either last night or this morning, that the 3 teams that maybe invested the most into NIL resources to the transfer portal all look like they might miss the NCAA tournament. K-State is not a might, but Indiana and Arkansas looking a little rough.
So I think for people who like basketball, I am willing to organize a group, a call, a meeting to call Interpol on Mike Woodson. I don't like. Do you know how hard it is to get the University of Indiana men's varsity basketball program to quit? Because they quit on one of the greatest players in the history of the program, Mike Woodson.
At home.
Illinois should have beaten them by 40. That's
did
one
Illinois
of the worst
even have their best guy? Did Illinois even have their best guy?
Yeah, KP was back.
Yeah.
Or KJ, excuse me. Latvian kid, yeah. Yeah, really good. He's going to be a lottery pick probably. They did have him back, but like Omar Ballo got tossed because he was just being a goon during the game. I mean, it's hideous.
Yeah.
That's one of the worst like blue blood game performances like ever. Like we're talking the Bill Self vodka game bad last night from Indiana. And Arkansas is honestly like in the same spot K-State is in, but with even higher expectations. Like, look at all the talent we brought. We got Cal's guys. We're back. Nope. Wrong.
Yeah, and it was one thing to lose 3 straight SEC games to ranked teams. Lost to LSU last night.
Man, you want to talk about a team that doesn't run anything? I mean, it just sucks.
When was the last time John Calipari called a play? Let's be honest.
The 2012 national championship game.
Yeah, and the play was throw it up to Anthony Davis.
Yeah, entry pass.
I think I could have won a national title with freshman Anthony Davis.
So you didn't lose, just ran out of time.
So lots of college basketball to get to on today's edition of 580 Sports Talk. Going to talk some football as well, top of the 4 o'clock hour. Which matchups will define Chiefs-Texans? There's one really obvious answer to that question, but we'll look at some of the other questions about some of the matchups for Chiefs-Texans as we get closer to Saturday's divisional playoff game at Arrowhead Stadium. Certainly sounds from Steve Spagnuolo, Chiefs defensive coordinator, that Jalen Watson is moving in the direction of playing on Saturday, which is a big deal. And I'll point out what matchup in particular means it's a big deal to have Jalen Watson on the field. Even if he's not all the way back into game shape, just his presence could really help one particular matchup for Saturday's game. So we'll get to that as well. Mentioned Tim Fitzgerald's going to join us. All the other things you've come to know and love from a Wednesday edition of the program. We'll play some One Gotta Go here in a little while. We got What Is Wrong With You coming up the 4 o'clock hour, sports headlines in the 5 o'clock hour, all that good stuff. Plus, your interaction with the program today, invited and encouraged. Text line is wide open, 785-272-9429. That is 785-272-9429. If you are watching the show live on our YouTube channel, that is 580 Sports Talk, again, in the web browser or on your mobile device, there is a live chat that you can interact with and chat with us, chat with your fellow listeners throughout the duration of the program.
And that's YouTube live chat. That's actually started where I would like to begin our K-State discussion today.
Yeah.
So the YouTube comments not happy about last night's game. Let's go. Let's start with John, who says, K-State game last night. I tried to watch it, tried to pirate it, tried to listen to it, gave up and watched reruns. I don't know what episode of Cheers you saw, John, or Becker or whatever, but I'm sure it was more enjoyable. You ever watch Becker?
No.
Underrated show. Ted Danson.
The first 10 minutes of the game were only available if you were able to stream it on the CBS Sports app or CBSSports.com, because the end of DePaul Marquette took
DePaul
forever.
Was so close.
That game went overtime. There were lots of very long video reviews because I taped it. 8 o'clock is bedtime. So I can't get to a game necessarily that starts at 8 o'clock. So I taped it. I was going to catch up with it. I got caught up in a hurry because the first 10 minutes weren't on film.
Yeah.
So I missed all of that. You want me to break down the first 10 minutes of this basketball game? I'm sorry. I got nothing for you.
But you could have watched a better game in Marquette versus DePaul.
Yeah.
So there's that. We also have Christopher, who says, I think I'd rather floss my teeth with floss that actually accidentally got in the body wash than watch last night's game. Glad I only had radio. We also have Bill, who succinctly puts octagon of crap.
Bill, also a Becker fan, as it turns out.
Hell yeah. Great show.
Shout out to Bill.
Underrated sitcom.
Yeah, Ted Danson's great. One of the all-time great TV actors, no doubt. It was not pleasant in any way, shape, or form, and the end result was not a pleasant one. 61-57, Texas Tech defeats K-State. That's 4 straight losses for the Cats since winning their Big 12 opener. K-State missed their final 8 shots of the basketball game.
Didn't score for nearly 6 minutes. What?
It's so
6
bad.
minutes.
It's so bad. The game was tied with 8:17 to play. Kansas State scored 2 points in the final 8 minutes, 17 seconds of the basketball game. That's 2 whole TV timeouts.
I saw, it was Kellis Robinette of the Wichita Eagle, who I thought really described the final moments perfectly on Twitter last night. Said, in the final 5 minutes and 50 seconds, Texas Tech only scored 4 points. That was enough to win by 4 points.
Won by 4 points.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was gross because, look, Texas Tech did not want to win that basketball game. They were sloppy. They were not good on offense. K-State defended their tails off. Look, we talked about it yesterday. Like, what kind of effort are we going to see from this K-State team? Are they totally checked out? Are they a totally fractured group? Or are they still going to bring it, play with a little bit of pride at home in a winnable game? And the latter happened. Like, I don't have any problem with K-State's effort last night. I thought David Gasson played his tail off because he always does. I'm going to say it again. I know that the state of this Kansas State team does not make you want to check in or follow or root for this particular Wildcat team. But, man, I hope you turn out on senior night for David Gasson because that dude deserves an ovation. That dude is a Wildcat, man.
He's working, man.
He is busting his butt. He's an imperfect player, and it is tough for him to play the 5 in this league because he's not really a 5, but he's what they've got. And he's playing his butt off. I thought Coleman Hawkins did some good things, gave him a lift. Brendan Housen made some big shots to get him back into the game after it looked like Texas Tech might run him off the floor in the first half. It was there for the taking for Kansas State, much like the TCU game was there for the taking, much like the Drake game was there for the taking, much like the Liberty game in the tournament in the Virgin Islands was there for the taking. If K-State had won all 4 of those games, and it does not take a stretch to see a version of those games in which K-State makes literally one more shot and wins all of those games, K-State's 11-5, 3-2 in the conference, and we are talking tournament with this bunch. We're not talking as much about the flaws. Like, there have been some gut punches this season for K-State that have made them feel further away from being in the conversation than they actually are. But they don't there's not a tally in the standings for almost wins. You have to get them over the line. And this team has failed in those spots. Those are the close games for K-State. That and the Cincinnati game. And they have not gotten those games over the line. And the reasons that they have struggled are all kind of running together. This is a flawed basketball team. We know that. Brendan Housen, I said, gave them some really good things offensively. Barbecue chicken alert on defense. Yeah. They were talking about it on the broadcast that in the second half when Texas Tech was making baskets, it was because they were getting one-on-one. Whoever Housen was guarding was just taking him to the basket and scoring. That's a problem because you can't play him on defense. But if you don't play him on offense, you don't have any spacing and you need spacing. So
you need someone who's a threat.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a hard enough time scoring in the paint. They need someone outside of it who can give you something. You mentioned earlier the thing from Jeff Goodman where he posted last night that the 3 teams with reportedly the biggest NIL payrolls for their basketball team, Indiana, Arkansas, and K-State, are all right now shaping up to miss the NCAA tournament. I think coaching is a large problem for all of them. Now, I admittedly biased here because we cover the K-State program and, have followed Jerome Tang for a couple of years now. I don't think Jerome Tang is as bad as Mike Woodson is as a head coach. Like for me, Indiana's problem is its head coach is stuck in 1975. I mean, it's a disaster. I think John Calipari, we were joking about it earlier, but it's true, hasn't run a play since he had Anthony Davis. Like that's a coaching problem.
That's also kind of stuck in the past.
I don't
what
think
they do.
Jerome Tang, like they need to run something. I think Jerome Tang can find success with his team not being in football. It's always the CEO coach, right?
Yeah.
Which is always like, oh yeah, this guy's too stupid to draw up a play, but he's a good leader. People like Mike Tomlin, like John Harbaugh, the CEO coach. I think Jerome Tang, with his motivational ability, and not that he's an idiot when it comes to game playing, good defensive coach when he was with Baylor. I mean, we talked about it. Remember the first year that Baylor really sucked on defense?
Was the year he left.
Exactly. So, I mean, he's not an idiot by any means, but I think given his motivational abilities, I think the way that he has, at least in the past, related to players, and the fact that he has gotten guys to want to play for him, whether it's because of money or something else, that's valuable, and you can lead a team with
Yeah,
that.
if it were easy to get the level of talent that Jerome Tang has convinced to come to Manhattan, coaches would have been able to do it for the past 25, 30 years.
Bruce would be here.
Yeah.
Bruce Weber would still have a job. So here's my problem where I think there's a hang up with the coaching for K-State, and I talked about this a week or two ago. What are the assistants doing? Like, and I'm sorry to name names. Like, what does Dream Dowling do except tweet? What is Rodney Perry doing? Well, I thought he was supposed to be like, yo, the dudes love him. Link Academy. What does he do? I don't really know what they have on this staff other than dudes who like to tweet.
It goes back to not having a real firm identity on offense and not really having, as Bill puts it in the YouTube comments, not really having a guy who can go get you a bucket. Coleman Hawkins isn't really that guy.
No.
Like, it depends on if he gets a good matchup, he can get down low and score, but he's not like a bucket getter. It's not like get him the rock and get out of his way kind of guy. The idea is that you have a point guard who creates those opportunities for players, but Doug McDaniel, conspicuous by his absence down the stretch. And look, I'm not criticizing Jerome Tang for that. You know who led K-State in plus minus last night? David Castillo. They were plus 11 when he was on the floor. So
he should be playing in those moments.
I don't have any problem with David Castillo over Doug McDaniel down the stretch, because what has Doug McDaniel done to prove that he should be the guy in the game down the stretch on a consistent basis?
Yeah,
like we've seen it in flashes, but we haven't seen it often enough for a guy of his talent level. And that brings me to the point that, as I started to sit with this one this morning, I think there are two schools of thought, and I think they can both be true. Number one, I think this team has suffered from a lack of continuity when it comes to who is playing and when. Michaela Rich has all of a sudden disappeared from the rotation. He's been replaced by Moby Ike-Garuka, and I don't know what he does.
First off the bench last night.
I don't know what Moby Ike-Garuka does well. I don't know what he does. I'm sure he's great in practice. It looks like he's a really good athlete. Like, he's springy and he can run, and like, what is he good at in terms of basketball?
Effort, maybe?
Like
is that it?
That may be the message Jerome Tang is trying to send to his team.
Could be.
That this is a guy who's busting it in practice, and I don't think it's a coincidence. This is a guy, of all the new guys coming to the team, this is the JUCO guy, right? Like, this is a guy who had to earn this from the JUCO ranks. He'll earn it in the dirt and not have a big, I don't know that Moby's cashing a big NIL check, right? And that might be the lesson from Jerome Tang. And I think he said as much in the post-game press conference, saying the guys who don't put forth, and I'm paraphrasing here, the guys that don't put forth an effort worthy of the K-State uniform are not going to play. And if Moby is the example in practice. That's great. The problem that creates for you in a Big 12 basketball game is he does not appear to give you anything other than that effort, that example. And that is great in practice. Can you win a basketball game when you're playing functionally 4-on-5? I don't think you can. Castillo over McDaniel is another example. Ugonna and Yenso played 21 minutes on Saturday, didn't get a sniff last night. And some of that is matchup related when it comes to being a big man, I know, but there's just this lack of continuity with what we're seeing from the rotation. So it's hard for a group, a first five, to get a rhythm playing together. And that is going to cost you wins in the short term. But I don't think Jerome Tang's thinking short term anymore, because I think he understands just as well as we do. This team's not going to the NCAA tournament. Like, it's not happening. What did we say? They had to win 12, at least 12, if not 13 games in the conference to make the NCAA tournament. That would mean from here going 12-3. That is 1,000% not happening.
You don't mean you don't see, or you mean to tell me you don't see 12 more wins out of 2 games against KU, 2 games against Iowa State, at Baylor, got to play Arizona. You don't see 12 wins in there?
I do not. No.
Now, I will say, K-State does get to play. I mean, though, that's tough. You got to play 5 games combined against KU, Arizona, and Iowa State. Yeah, good luck. They do also get to play some of the bottom feeders of the conference. Like, they get to play Utah. They get to play against Colorado. That's nice. They get to play Oklahoma State. Oh, they lost by double digits to Oklahoma State.
Well, you play them at home.
Yeah, I mean, they might need to have a school kid day to fill the crowd for that one.
Boy, that was worse than I expected.
Yeah, man.
The wide angle crowd shots at Bramlage Coliseum last night, that was worse than I expected. I don't even remember being that bad for some of the late stage Weber stuff. And look, I understand some of that.
Those were rough. But I feel bad because I know this. Like, we know, you even more than me, but we know this K-State fan base, if there's a winner or at least a team worth seeing, even if it's not going to win the conference, right, they're going to pack that place.
This is not an accusation that K-State fans are being frontrunners with this group. I just don't think they have a reason to care about these guys. These guys haven't given them a reason to care about them. It's a two-way street.
Yeah, it's not an indictment of the fans at all.
In college, more so than the pros, it's a two-way street. You got to be worth going to see. You got to represent the university in a way that people who love the university, who root for the university, want to go and support.
Yep.
And this group hasn't done that. But circling back real quick to my point here, David Castillo playing crunch time minutes, Moby Ike Garuka playing crunch time minutes. Those are all guys with a future in the program.
Yep.
A future that Coleman Hawkins does not have because he's out after this year. A future that Doug McDaniel probably at this stage does not have, because I cannot imagine, even though he has a year of eligibility, that year is going to be spent in Manhattan, Kansas playing for Jerome Tang at this point. You may as well, if you're Jerome Tang, start looking at who can we build something around, because John in the YouTube comment says K-State has swung for the fence the last 2 years in recruiting and missed multiple times. That's what's created the disappointment of these last 2 years. It's a little bit like junior college, where now you're trying to build a team on the fly, and if you swing and miss with the guys you give Scullies to, strap in and deal with the turbulence and see what next year can be. Start thinking ahead until next year. That's kind of where K-State finds themselves right now with this roster, that they've got to figure out which of these guys is going to be with me next year, and how can we make sure that they are ready to contribute next season. Because the idea that David Castillo is your starting point guard next year is tantalizing. I think he's a nice talent. I think that he has had his ups and downs because he's a freshman playing in the Big 12. But good things happened with him on the floor last night. He defended well. He had a big bucket. I think it was their only basket in the final 8 minutes last night. He only got a score. So I'm okay with that, honestly. If that's going to be the direction that Kansas State goes from here on out, where David Castillo's getting a lot of minutes, where you're trying to see what can be with the guys who do have that extra year or two of eligibility, with the CJ Joneses and the Brendan Housens, and frankly, the Ugonna and Yensos, and even, yes, the Moby Ike Garukas. Let's see if that effort and athleticism can translate to something in a Big 12 basketball game. Right now it doesn't, but let's see if it can, because that's what's going to be the long-term way to build success here at Kansas State. This has to be a learning experience for this program, for this head coach, and this coaching staff, that the quick fix, the lightning in a bottle, that was a one-off. And you've got to build something that lasts, build something substantial to win here and get those people back in Bramlage Coliseum, because it can't look like that.
Yep. No argument for me. I would much rather see Castillo and Onyensu and Ike Gwaruka and all these guys. I'd much rather see them. Housen for sure. Just, there's pieces here that I like. I like Housen. He's limited, but I like Housen. And I don't think
outstanding shooter, and I think he can get a bucket too. Like, he showed at one point a nice little drive, a little up and under fake, and a bank shot in the first half.
Not a bad player.
Pulled up from Caitlin Clark range to hit a 3 to cap off that big first half run. Like,
and like, I don't think Coleman Hawkins is a bad player. I think Coleman Hawkins is being asked to do things that he's not equipped to do. That sounds familiar. Sort of like a 2-guard last year who was the prize of the transfer portal class who had to play out of position all year.
Yeah.
What program did that?
Quest Glover doesn't get hurt. Maybe they wouldn't have had to.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. No doubt. But there was also, they had plan A, and that was it.
Yeah.
Which is tough.
We'll take a time out here on 580 Sports Talk. I have a hypothetical about this K-State team regarding a transfer that picked the other Sunflower State team. Brennan and I are going to discuss that. We're just getting warmed up on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. .335. We're just getting started on 580 Sports Talk this afternoon. Coming up in a bit, we'll play a game of One Gotta Go. We'll talk some Chiefs football at the 4 o'clock hour. Tim Fitzgerald will join us from GoPowerCat.com for the Wildcat Wrap-Up at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. Speaking of the Wildcats, I had this thought last night watching them play. We were talking about the need for a bucket getter. When you play 5 out like K-State does, I thought it was a good line. I forget, maybe John in the YouTube comments that says they should change the name of the lineup from 5 out to 6 out because they can't score from 6 out.
That is pretty funny.
That's a good line from John in the YouTube comments. What I would say is if you're going to run the 5 out, you need a darting and dashing creative point guard. And K-State's only had that from Doug McDaniel and fits and starts. Or you need a guy who can take his man off the dribble, get a ball screen, get downhill, get to the rim, and score the basketball. And K-State just doesn't have one of those downhill guys on this roster. There's one that's not really being used, almost mothballed entirely on the KU roster. They don't allow trades in college basketball, but in a universe where they did, and K-State called KU as like, hey, we could really use AJ Storr. Would that make sense? Like, it's just a hypothetical that I had in my head. If AJ Storr were wearing purple and not Jayhawk blue and red, would that have been better for Storr? Would that have been better for the Wildcats?
I think yes, absolutely it would be, because AJ Storr has been at his best when the structure of the offense is essentially give the ball to AJ Storr. His first year at St. John's, when he had a really impressive freshman year. Last year when he put up a bunch of points at Wisconsin. He is a ball-dominant volume scorer. He needs to shoot the ball a lot. He has to have the ball in his hands a lot. Doesn't play a lot of defense, doesn't really rebound. He put in some okay effort against Cincinnati on the defensive end, but I mean, that's what he's doing. I understand why. I said this to CJ Moore when we talked to him last week, and we'll talk to CJ again coming up tomorrow for the Big 12 breakdown. But, I understand why he was a KU target, because he said, hey, score. We need scoring. We need offense. Get a guy who can get a bucket. I also understand why it has not worked to this point, and probably isn't going to, quote unquote, work the rest of the way. I understand all of those different points. K-State right now, though, just doesn't have anyone who can do anything in these late game situations. Like, Coleman Hawkins ain't that guy. Brendan Housen ain't that guy. None of these guys are that guy. But if you had someone who you could say, go get me a bucket, find a way.
Especially in a game where you don't score for the final 5 minutes and 50 seconds. Like, get to the free throw line.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Just someone who can create something.
You don't even draw a foul in 9 minutes and 50 seconds.
No one at KU gets to the free throw line anymore for whatever reason. But last year, I mean, AJ Storr got to the line. Let me see how many times. I mean, he got to the line a decent number of times per game, over 4 free throw attempts a game. That's not a gigantic number, but it's better than nothing. It's better than not getting there at all. And he could be the guy. Like, it might not be great, but losing to Drake by 1 score, losing to Texas Tech by 2 scores and going 6 minutes nearly scoreless, losing by 1 score to TCU. Having a guy who is not ever afraid to shoot the ball would be a godsend for this team.
Yeah, they could use a guy like that. It's very ironic that KU has a guy like that they don't really need and don't really use in that way. But I think that it goes to show that K-State is not alone in being seduced by the idea of, we're going to go get the name. We're going to go get the name and make it work. We're just going to add a piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like, free agency is largely new to college basketball, right? Like, in the NIL form and fashion, the transfer portal form and fashion. So the idea that, we're just going to add the talent and we'll make it fit. It doesn't always work. It does not always work out. And I think that, again, this whole year has to be instructive for Jerome Tang and Kansas State. But you go back and you look at that first transfer class, when they had to put together an entire team from scratch, they didn't go out and get a bunch of names. They got a name in Keontae Johnson. And then they kind of plugged in guys who were veterans who could fill a role. Your Desi Sillses, your the big guy, Bebe Iziolas, your the Tyke Green, a guy who had a very specific role that didn't even require him to play every game. But when
that dude had bounce.
Yes, when he was asked to play the dunker spot, I forget what game it was where they put him in the dunker against his own, and he just had a huge second half.
I know exactly the game you're talking about. Yeah,
you had guys who filled roles instead of, we're just going to go get the shiny names and mash it together and hope the pot doesn't bubble over. There's a lesson here, and K-State is far from the only program learning that lesson. We'll talk about that later on in the program today as well. But first, we'll take this time out. We'll come back with a little round of One Gotta Go as this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk continues. One Gotta Go time on 580 Sports Talk. We play it every Wednesday. Brennan, you got a One Gotta Go for us today?
Yes, I do. So we're going to the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. I'm going to give you all 4 games and their coaching matchups, the quality of head coach in all 4 games. One's got to go. What's the worst of the bunch? You got DeMeco Ryans versus Andy Reid, Dan Campbell versus Dan Quinn, the Dan battle. You've got Sean McVay versus Nick Sirianni, and John Harbaugh versus Sean McDermott. What's the worst coaching matchup? One's got to go.
There are a lot of ways to answer that question, right?
Yeah.
A lot of different ways that that you could answer what is the worst one. I will answer it by saying what I think is the most one-sided coaching matchup, and it doesn't necessarily mean I think that coach is going to win. But as far as a coach I have a lot of regard for and a coach that I don't have a lot of regard for, it's McVay and Sirianni.
Interesting that you're going with that one. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of regard for Sirianni either. You can't say that he gets no credit for them being as good as they were, but at the same time, it feels like they won in spite of him.
Yes. No, 1,000%. Like, he's one bad loss away from everybody saying to, like, if they lost to the Rams, it would be fire Sirianni o'clock. Yeah. Like, every radio, like WIP's phone lines would be full in Philadelphia with, people from people who say wooder instead of water talking about firing Nick Sirianni.
See, I thought you might be talking about Dan Quinn versus Dan Campbell with that description.
Man, every now and again, I come across my old tweets about Dan Campbell. I've never been wronger about anything in my whole life.
So many people were, though. I mean, I was wrong about it. He's been great, and his staff is incredible, too. He knows how to pick talented people to be his coordinators and assistants as well. I think I would lean with that game. Not that I think Dan Quinn is a bad coach, that his assistants are bad coaches, but I think the Lions are among the very best coached teams in the league. I don't necessarily think that about the Commanders. I don't think they're poorly coached. I think Dan Quinn got a bad rap. I think Dan Quinn, all things considered, did a good job in Atlanta as their head coach. Yes. Now, he will always have to wear 28-3. That will never, ever, ever leave him, or Kyle Shanahan for that matter. But Atlanta is also not exactly a franchise that's won a lot in its history. So I think Quinn's a better coach than he gets credit for. That being said, Dan Campbell right now is like top 4, top 5 in the NFL.
Talk about CEO coaches. Who's better than Dan Campbell at that?
Pulls all the right strings. That's the thing that amazes me is that he just, and you can criticize, well, if he had not gone for that 1 4th down against the 49ers, things that, he pulls the right string 90% of the time. I mean, his hit rate on those is astronomical.
For my One Gotta Go today, the pass rush groups for the 4 remaining AFC teams, the Chiefs, the Texans, the Bills, the Ravens, which of those would you say is the worst and thus has to go? Who's got the worst group of pass rushers?
So the Texans stay easily.
Yeah, they led the league in sacks.
Anderson and Hunter is a great group. After that, I think I might go with, I'm going to keep the Chiefs because I want Chris Jones. Chris Jones deserves on his own to stay. And I mean, I'm a big George Karlaftis fan, always have been. Amenahu is fine. So I'll keep the Chiefs. Between those other two, though, I'm not sure. I think I would get rid of... I think I'd move on from the Bills.
Interesting.
I think. I really like Odafe Owe in Baltimore. Yeah, I think he's a really good player.
He's had a breakout year for sure.
Now, I will say, keeping Baltimore, that could be a product of scheme. Chris Orr got things figured out about midway through the season. Now, they're still not great defensively, but they're getting better. And he runs a lot of what... oh my gosh, Mike McDonald was running a lot of that simulated pressure stuff. Yeah. And I think that masks a lot of deficiencies. Matabike is still a good interior pass rusher.
Big step back this year. Got the bag, changed his name, and Nnamdi Matabike.
I forgot he had changed his name.
Not as effective as Justin Matabike, apparently.
So I'll keep the Ravens, but I'm not super confident in it.
Yeah, my lead was to ditch the Ravens because their leader in sacks, Kyle Van Noy, is not a guy that you think of as like a a beast of an individual pass rusher.
No, never has been.
And always good. And Matt Abike took a step back this year, like I mentioned, where with the Bills, they've got guys you feel like can win a one-on-one. Even in a spot, Von Miller can win a one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know that he recorded a stat. I don't have the box score from the Bronco game in front of me, but like Von Miller jumped off the screen on a couple of third down pass rush situations. Like, there's still something there. It hasn't been productive this year, but like in a pinch, he can win a one-on-one. Rousseau can win a one-on-one. Epinesa is a good player. Like,
yeah, no, that's a fair argument. That's totally fair.
So yeah, I figured it'd be between those two.
All right, I've got another one for you before we get to break here. Inspired by the sparse crowd at Bramlage Coliseum last night. One's got to go. Which of these is the worst? In a dead or empty crowd at a football game, a baseball game, or a basketball game?
Oh man, yeah, football's the worst, I would say, because at least with basketball, there's like sounds of the game. Yeah, and there's like interstitial music you can play like while a team has the ball and everything. You almost don't notice sometimes. Like you watch an NBA game where the crowd's half empty, you don't even really notice.
No, and it's just a faster game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think football is
empty,
the worst in that regard.
Yeah, like you gotta, back in the bad old days at David Booth, Kansas Memorial Stadium, when like there's nobody there but the students. Mm-hmm. That's a drag. Like, yeah,
and it's just like there's so many timeouts, and
I've had some of those fun times in my life at baseball games that were sparsely attended. Give me a business person special with like 6,000 people at the K or Coors Field or wherever on a Wednesday afternoon in August. Give that to me.
No, that's a fact. Kick back, have my 6 hot dogs with me. They can all have their own seat.
You can hear each individual heckler. It's great.
Yeah, I'll keep score. You can find more ways to engage with the game without the crowd in baseball. Baseball's the best of them alone. Yes. I love going to baseball games by myself. I seriously love it.
I do too. I did it many a time in my singlehood.
People always told me it was weird. Nah, man, it's great.
Oh, people always say doing stuff alone is weird. Going out to eat alone is weird. Going to the movies alone is weird. No, shut up. You're weird. Let me live my life. I don't need to have somebody tagging along the whole time to enjoy my life.
Back when KU had a bowling alley in its Union, I regret not going more often, just me. I was like, ew, why would you go alone? I don't know, because I like to bowl and I don't want to hang out with you.
I like it better having somebody to tag along with for the rest of my life. That's why I got married.
Well,
but,
yes. But yeah, like before Abby and I were married or when we lived in different towns or whatever, I mean, I'd go, I just enjoy the afternoon, slather up in sunscreen, eat a bunch of hot dogs.
Hell yeah, brother.
Great.
Real living. Big basketball games tonight at Lee Arena. Brendan Dworzinski's going to preview them before he steps out for the day as we wrap up this 3 o'clock hour. 580 Sports Talk next. 580 Sports Talk, wrapping up hour number 1 of the program. This is where Brendan Dworzinski departs from us today. He's headed out to Lee Arena for some Turnpike Tussle basketball. The Emporia State Hornets are in town. What is it, second time in 11 days?
Yeah, second time in 11 days, these teams will go head-to-head. The first edition, despite the interstate being icy on the way home, was great for Washburn. The women won an 11-point second-half comeback to win 64-61. And the men set a record for the Turnpike Tussle with 105 points scored, most they've ever scored against Emporia State. They looked great in that game. So, yeah, a couple big ones out there tonight. This is just the third time ever that Washburn, third week ever, that Washburn is the number 1 team in the country in Division II. We talked about that on the show earlier this week. That was yesterday, in fact. So a big opportunity here because a lot of undefeated teams have seen their perfect season come to an end in the last 2 weeks. So this is a big one for Washburn. You know that they're not going to take anyone too lightly. Mm-hmm. And when I spoke with, for the men's side, Coach Brett Ballard a couple weeks ago before the first game against Emporia, he said, look, they're rebuilding. They have a new head coach. They brought in a bunch of transfers. They're young. Like, they're not the same team now that they will be at the end of the year. And I agree. And I actually do think, in all fairness, Emporia's got a few pieces that could be pretty nice by the end of the year. That being said, Washburn scored 105 on them just 11 days ago, which feels pretty good. And I'm excited about the women's game, too. The women, despite that loss on Saturday, played their best basketball of the year over the last three-ish weeks. There was a gap in there during the Christmas break. But since December 21st against UCM, they've been playing their best basketball of the year. So should be a couple fun ones tonight.
Yeah, overshadowed naturally by the men ascending to number 1 in the country. But Laura Westling's Washburn women have started to find their footing a little bit. Super young team, no seniors, and you can see the light bulbs starting to come on an individual and team-wide basis. And they're really starting to develop some traction and taking on an Emporia State team that's taking a bit of a step back this year.
They have, yeah, and they lost some talent. They had some personnel changes through the first couple of weeks of the season as well. Helps for Washburn to have one of the best centers in the country, the best center in the MIAA right now in Bari Widata. And that is always going to give Washburn an advantage inside. And this is a team in Emporia that does not have a ton inside. That being said, you know who they do have inside? Former Silver Lake Eagles state champion Mackenzie McDaniel.
That's right.
She is a player.
Yeah, getting a lot of run as a freshman. That Emporia team has a lot of local to them in particularly. So a little further south of us, but a lot of local and a lot of Kansas talent on that roster. So should be a raucous atmosphere at Lee Arena. I know a lot of people are going to come out tonight who might not have wanted to brave the weather last week to see these Ichabod men in their first home game since November. I expect a very impressive crowd at Lee Arena, particularly for that men's game tonight. Should be a lot of fun. Tell the people when and where they can tune in.
Game 1 has pregame starting at 5:15, tip-off at 5:30. The men are scheduled for roughly a 7:30 start. You can catch all the action over on our sister station, Country 106.9. By the way, it is Invista Cares night at Lee Arena. If you bring, I believe it's 3, it might be 5 canned goods that you can drop off as a donation at the gate, you get discounted admission as well.
There you go. Can't beat that. I think it's 4 cans, actually.
Oh,
so you were right in the middle. Yeah, split in the middle. 4 cans, $5 ticket. Get you in to Lee Arena. So that's where Brendan's headed. We're going to stick around here, do 2 more hours of 580 Sports Talk. We're going to talk Chiefs-Texans, the matchups that will define Saturday's divisional playoff game. Plus, we'll talk to Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com. That's coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. Hour number 2 of 580 Sports Talk on a Wednesday afternoon in the capital city. Thanks for being with us. It's so great to have you along on the sports voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com. And a special hello to those of you watching us either live or archived on our YouTube channel. 580 Sports Talk is the name of the channel. You can watch us live. You can watch us tape delayed. You can go back into the archives and watch every episode of our sports talk shows that we've done since Halloween of 2023. Is it 22? It might be 22. We might be going. Yeah, I think it's 22. So we go back a ways on the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. If you are indeed watching, you can also watch us on Facebook if you'd like at WIBW News. I'm Dan Lucero. Spencer Dupuis has traded out with Brendan Dworzinski in the control room. He's behind the board for the rest of the way. Brendan Dworzinski is off to Lee Arena for Washburn basketball tonight. The Bods and the Hornets, a turnpike tussle on the hardwood tonight for the second time in 11 days. Women tip off at 5:30. The men's game follows. Washburn playing for the first time this year as the number 1 team in America in Division II men's basketball. Pre-game coverage gets it all underway over on our sister station, your exclusive home of the Ichabods, Country 106.9, starting at 5:15 this evening. So that's where Brendan's at. So it's just the two of us, me and Spencer, the rest of the way. Got lots of great stuff still on deck for the show today. Plenty more college basketball to get to, including a look ahead to tonight's KU Iowa State game at Hilton Coliseum. And also K-State not being the only team that sunk a lot of money into players and NIL deals and have not seen the return on investment that they were hoping for. And some of them had some pretty ugly losses last night as well. So we'll get into that a little bit later on. Also, we'll talk plenty of K-State with Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com. He'll join us in about half an hour or so, bottom of this hour, for what we call the Wildcat Wrap-Up. And we'll get Fitz's perspective on last night's K-State loss to Texas Tech. And he has an interesting perspective on it that I'll admit maybe changed mine a little bit on what it was that we saw from Kansas State last night, at least pertaining to who played and how much and who was on the floor at the end of the game. So you're going to want to hear from Fitz. I mean, you always want to hear from Fitz, but you're going to want to hear from Fitz today. If you are a K-State fan, he will join us at the bottom of this hour on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline for the Wildcat Wrap-Up. Also, what is wrong with you? Coming up later this hour as well. But we begin by getting into some football. Chiefs-Texans now is 3 days away at Arrowhead Stadium as the Chiefs and the Texans meet in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. Chiefs remain heavily favored, an 8-point favorite on the boards. In fact, it's moved at Prairie Band Sportsbook in Mayetta to 8.5 points with the Chiefs in favor. You've got to buy the hook now if you're looking to bet the Chiefs tonight. And I want to talk about the matchups that are going to define this game. The one-on-one matchups or the unit versus unit matchups are going to define this game. And the one that is the most obvious answer to that particular question is the Chiefs tackles against the Texans pass rush. Because the Texans pass rush made life extremely difficult for Justin Herbert last Saturday in the wild card round. It's why the Texans are moving on to this divisional playoff game. Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. absolutely dominated the football game. They got something like 9 quick pressures on 26 dropbacks. It was an absurd number like that, where they were not just winning their one-on-ones, they were winning decisively. Now, it wasn't just their matchups on the edges at the tackle positions. It wasn't just the rookie Alt and the veteran Rashawn Slater that Hunter and Anderson were tormenting. It was also some of the guys on the interior as well, because the Texans were able to run some pass rush games, because Danico Autry also balled out. Really good player, Danico Autry, an underrated player, I think, throughout his career. He was limited in practice yesterday with a knee injury, but that's probably just precautionary. We don't have the full Texans injury report, or participation report, rather, for today. We do have the Chiefs, and we'll get to that a little bit later on because it's unchanged from yesterday. But on cue, Tyler asking for that in the YouTube live chat. We welcome those of you who are chatting with us, watching the YouTube stream on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, or watching on the web browser or the mobile device. You can also text the program today, 785-272-9429. Again, the text line number, 785-272-9429.
The Texans have put out their injury report.
Oh, is that out now?
Yeah, it just got put out at the top of the hour.
Okay. Let me bring that up here because I was over at the Chiefs website and
it takes a little bit there for them to get it.
Yeah,
to
get theirs and also apparently takes the Texans time to get theirs posted as well. Yeah, it's still not on their website either.
It's on their Twitter.
It's on their Twitter. Okay.
Well, I guess it's Texans PR retweeted, or Texans retweeted their PR.
Okay. Houston
they have
Texans
some big
PR.
old graphic.
Yeah. So it looks like everybody except Robert Woods practiced today. Robert Woods was the only DNP. Yeah, I don't like how this is formatted. It looks like they did it in alphabet. I have no idea what order they did this in. They made it very hard for a broadcaster to just bring you the information, which I don't love. Anyway,
they definitely did it in alphabetical order by last name.
Yeah, they sure did. So Robert Woods, DNP for a second straight day with a hip injury. Juice Scruggs, interior offensive lineman, upgraded from DNP to limited, as was guard Shaq Mason, upgraded from DNP to limited. Azeez Al-Shire, who injured his knee in the wild card victory over the Chargers and notably did not play in the first meeting against the Chiefs because he was serving that 3-game suspension for being a dirty player. He was upgraded as well from a did not practice to a limited participant today. Those were the upgrades. Everybody else has the same status as the day before, with one exception. We'll get there. Dalton Schultz, tight end, limited for a second straight day. Danico Autry, who I just mentioned, limited for a second straight day. Will Anderson Jr., full participant. Nick Broker, offensive lineman, full participant. Tegan Quitoriano, coming off of IR, the tight end, a full participant. Joe Mixon was not listed yesterday, but is listed as a limited participant today. I don't know if that's vet rest or what. This graphic does not specify. It
says ankle, though. It does legit label ankle.
Oh, yeah, I see it here. Yeah. Yeah, because they pulled Nico Collins off the list. They didn't put him on with because he didn't practice yesterday because it was non-injury related. So if it were non-injury related, I guess they wouldn't list him. Okay. Good sleuthing, Spencer. Joe Mixon popped up on the injury report, limited with an ankle injury. So that is notable.
That is notable, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal. Anyhow, so that's what we've got there. Back to what I wanted to talk about. The matchup for the Chiefs that they have to at least not lose decisively is the matchup between their tackles and the edge pass rushers. But another matchup that really intrigues me are the matchups at the wide receiver spots. And I want to talk about this vis-a-vis the Chiefs defense to start. Nico Collins is really about it when it comes to the weapons that the Texans have at wide receiver. You remember before the season, they assembled a really impressive looking group of pass catchers, and most of them have been injured and not part of the conversation for this Saturday. Stephon Diggs out for the year. Tank Dell out for the year. So it's Nico Collins at wide receiver, and like John Mechie is wide receiver number 2. And with due respect to John Mechie, who's a great story, I think he had leukemia, was it? And recovered from that to resume his NFL career. It's a wonderful story. If that's wide receiver 2, that doesn't really scare anybody. So here's the big question, and I want to hear your opinion on this, Spencer Dupuis. If you could put your defensive coordinator hat on a little bit here. If you're Steve Spagnuolo, do you have Trent McDuffie follow Nico Collins on Saturday?
I think you do. I think that's what you do. I think that's the best thing possible.
So,
but also Jalen Watson potentially coming back throws a little wrench into every plan that they have, right? Because like it's not official yet. There could be a setback. So you go with planning on him playing, right? Like that's your plan. If he's full participant in practice, you go with him planning on playing. but there could be a setback.
There could.
Because he's not even on the active roster.
Yeah,
so.
he hasn't been activated yet. There is that extra roster spot. Could be for him, could be for McCole Hardman. I think it's more likely for Watson at this stage. We'll have to see. So the numbers from the game against the Chargers, the first playoff game for the Texans, C.J. Stroud threw 33 passes. Nico Collins and John Mechie had the same number of targets. They each had 8 targets. With his 8 targets, Nico Collins had 7 catches for 122 yards and a touchdown. With his 8 targets, John Mechie had 4 catches for 28 yards. Also, he lost a fumble.
Yeah.
So I think if you want to make sure that Nico Collins doesn't beat you, I would like to see Trent McDuffie follow him around.
Yep.
Now, he hasn't done a lot of that this year. And that's understandable. Like, the Chiefs like to be able to be a little bit flexible with how they line up. But I'm fascinated by the thought of McDuffie stapled to Nico Collins for 60 minutes. And if he can erase Nico Collins, which I think he can largely do, Collins doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who is going to give Trent McDuffie like 8 for 100 and a touchdown. If he could take Nico Collins out of the frame in man coverage, what then does that leave the Houston passing game looking like? Even without the presence of Jalen Watson. Now, if Watson plays, maybe that does change the line of thinking. Maybe then, if you're Steve Spagnuolo and you feel like not only are you going to have Jalen Watson, but you're going to have Jalen Watson close to 100% health-wise. You might not have him 100% like game shape-wise, and he spoke to that in his press conference earlier today. But if you feel like you're going to have an effective version of Jalen Watson on one side of the field, then maybe you just say, yeah, well, let's just do what we've been doing. Let's just stick with what we've stuck to all season long. Trent McDuffie's on one side of the field, and the other side, instead of being some combination of Joshua Williams, Najee Johnson, Chris Rowland Wallace, whoever, the other side is Jalen Watson. And we run with this because this was really effective before Watson got hurt early this season. Maybe you stick with that. Maybe you're tempted to. But I think in the playoffs, like last year, L'Jarius Sneed followed the other team's best receiver in the playoffs, right? Like he was on that assignment through the postseason in a way that they weren't as rigid about in the regular season. Because these games are must-win games, I think you pull that club out of the bag, if I may mix my sports metaphors, if you're Steve Spagnuolo. I would follow Nico Collins with Trent McDuffie. And I would say, he's not beating us. Go, throw it to John Mechie 10 times. Throw it to Robert Woods on a bad hip. Throw it to Xavier Hutchinson a bunch. Throw it to your tight end. See what Dalton Schultz still has in the tank. But that's who you're going to have to throw it to because Nico Collins is not an option. And I think if you do that, if you're the Chiefs, you take away the main source for this Houston team for the explosive plays that I think they're going to need to beat the Chiefs. I think you beat the Chiefs with explosives. You beat their defense with explosives. Nico Collins is the explosive guy. And I think that you've got an opportunity to take him away with an all-pro caliber cornerback in Trent McDuffie. The matchup on the other side that's interesting to me, the other side of the ball when we're also talking about the passing game. Hollywood Brown made his regular season debut against the Houston Texans back on December 21st. That was Hollywood Brown's first game as a Chief, first game back from injury. So he was limited, as they say, in terms of how many snaps he was going to play. And he did. He played a fairly limited number of snaps. And in that limited number of snaps, Marquise Hollywood Brown got 8 targets. I read his full government name because I'm looking at the Pro Football Reference box score. Apologies to Mr. Brown. His mama called him Marquise. I should be forgiven for calling him Marquise one time. Hollywood Brown had 5 catches on 8 targets. You know who got more targets than Hollywood Brown in his first game back against the Texans? It was Xavier Worthy, and that's it. Xavier Worthy got 11 targets in that game, caught 7 of them, 65 yards in a score. Hollywood Brown caught 5 of his 8 targets for 45 yards. Again, that's not like explosive numbers. That's 9 yards a catch. That's nothing really to write home about, but those were chain-moving plays. Those were on-schedule, efficient receptions. The Houston secondary is very good. They've got 2 rookies starting. They got the safety at the back end who's had a really good year, Kalen Bullock. They've got another rookie in Kamari Lassiter who's been terrific. Derek Stingley's a first-team All-Pro. They've got a really good secondary. How do you beat a good secondary? Strength in numbers. More weapons than the other guys can cover. Yeah. And if the Texans don't have that, with the absence of Diggs and Dell and really leaning heavily on Nico Collins to be the engine of their passing game, the Chiefs now have that. They have that surplus where you can have Worthy and Hopkins and Brown on the field. When you go 3 wide, somebody's going to be open, because the fourth receiver in that scenario is probably Travis Kelce, and you got to account for him. So somebody's going to be open. Hollywood Brown strikes me as the guy who's going to be open in this matchup. I don't know how you feel about it, Spencer, but I look to Hollywood Brown as being the guy who has the opportunity to be the chain mover and the drive extender and maybe even pop a big play against this very good Texans secondary.
I would agree with that. I think Travis Kelce is going to factor into this a lot more than people think. Obviously, if you look at this year, the numbers were down. I think historically his worst of his career, but he set last week, or he set 2 weeks ago, 25 days. He is fresh and ready to go. He's roaring to go. This might be his last go around. Like, it's legitimate. Like, this might be his last go around. I think he's going to put all the cards on the table.
Yeah. I never underestimate the motivation of a guy who's ring chasing, right? And has an opportunity, has never been this close. Like, you know how many, off the top of your head, how many playoff games that DeAndre Hopkins has played in his career?
I was talking about Travis Kelce.
Oh, you're talking about Kelce.
Yeah.
But I'm asking you about Hopkins too. I'm going to ask you this about Hopkins because I think it's a similar thought process with Hopkins, because Kelce's looking for the history and his third in a row and his fourth. Hopkins looking for his first. How many playoff games do you think DeAndre Hopkins has played in?
Was it 2?
6.
6. Okay.
He's played in 6 playoff games. He is 2-4 in those playoff games.
I forgot he's hopped around a few times now.
Well, he didn't play when Arizona played the Rams in 2021 in the playoffs. All his playoff appearances are with Houston, including 2 losses to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Back in 2015 and
I think obviously this game is big for him.
But yeah, like
you're going against the team that drafted
your veteran guys like Kelce and like Hopkins coming off of rest, motivated to finish this season strong. I think those guys are going to certainly be factors in the passing game. But defenses are going to pay attention to Travis Kelce. Hey, Kelce still draws those double teams even at the age that he's at, even with the
but he draws those double
production.
Teams. Who's open? Somebody's open.
So, I mean, somebody's
open.
Yeah.
And I think this postseason is going to be big for Mahomes as well, because he played particularly not bad, right? He did not play bad when he was hurt. He was clearly like he hurt his ankle, right?
Right.
He's had a whole month nearly of not playing. So I think he's going to be on another level in the playoffs.
So Mahomes was awesome down the stretch, right?
He was awesome down the stretch, and he literally was being hindered by an ankle that they said wasn't hurting him, but there's no way somebody could have healed that fast.
From the Bills game forward, Mahomes completed 65% of his passes, rounding up, 11 touchdowns, no picks, a QBR or rating rather, quarterback rating of 98.1 in those games, and numbers in terms of his yards per attempt and particularly his adjusted yards per pass attempt that were higher than his numbers in the games prior. He really found a rhythm down the stretch, and I don't think it's coincidental that the 2 games with Hollywood Brown, with that additional weapon, he was even better. I think Houston and Pittsburgh were the offense's best games. I think they were Mahomes' best games. And another non-coincidence, Mahomes was only sacked 1 time in those 2 games and only once in the last 3 starts in the regular season. So it all ties together. Certainly, they've got to do they've got to do a good job protecting the pocket from the not exterior rush. But I'm not talking about the interior rush either. So I guess for lack of a better term, the edge rush threat of Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr., if that can just be neutralized, those guys are going to win some reps. Matt Nagy spoke to the media earlier today and said as much. Like, those guys are really good. And there are going to be some snaps where they get the best of Juwan Taylor and left tackle to be determined. But the Chiefs have to be able to stay on schedule, have to be able to get the ball out quick, and they've got a whole bunch of guys who can get open quick now. And Hollywood Brown just adding to that collection of guys means that I think that the Chiefs should be able to really stay on that offensive schedule and maintain the efficiency that has really been their trademark throughout the season, even though the Texans pass rush is very potent and led the NFL in sacks. And I don't know that I would say it's the best that the Chiefs have faced this season, but it's up there. And Mahomes only sacked one time back on December 21st. And that was with Joe Thuney at left tackle and Mike Caliendo on the inside. And if the Texans think that they can run the same pass rush games against the Chiefs and attack their interior the way they attack the Chargers' interior, they got another thing. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, it's What Is Wrong With You time, and then Tim Fitzgerald will join us to talk Cats coming up on 580 Sports Talk. It is time for What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. Two news stories competing to try and take down our weekly champion, our winner from yesterday, which I've dubbed the Deputy Distracted Driving by Double D's. We don't know necessarily that that is the deputy's particular jam, but we do know that he got in a car wreck because he was watching pornographic material on his phone while he was driving his police vehicle, his police cruiser. Deputy Tristan McCumber from Lake County in Florida. Yeah. Do you watch, you ever see I Think You Should Leave?
I have not.
On Netflix. Like every third meme on social media is from I Think You Should Leave. Like the hot dog guy, the hot dog saying, "We're all trying to find a guy who did this." That's I think you should leave. It is screamingly
With Tom
funny.
Robinson.
Tom Robinson, yeah. It is
Oh, okay. I'll have to watch this.
screamingly
yeah.
fun. Like, I'll say this: either you think it's the funniest thing you've ever seen, or you think it's the dumbest thing you've ever seen. Like,
Okay.
there's really no in between. I'm of the belief that it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And there's an episode where it'd take me too long to get through the setup, and I'm not going to explain, but the kicker is Tim Robinson's character in the sketch saying, "You should be able to look at a little porn at work." And so, yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah, the sketch called Feed Eggs, I think. He's playing a video game at work. Anyway, it's very funny. Anyhow, I thought about that when I thought about the distracted deputy. Anyhow, he's our current weekly champ. We got 2 new stories today. Spencer, give it to me.
All right, let's go back to Florida. Hold on. Let me go up to the
Haines City.
Police said a Florida man recently was arrested for DUI with his blood alcohol level more than 6 times the legal limit.
Whoa.
The Haines City Police Department arrested Miguel Angel Anuel Rodriguez, 43, on January 7th in the Haines City area of Polk County. He currently is in Polk County Jail, according to records. Haines County City police officer was patrolling on January 7th when a concerned person called 911 about an unresponsive driver in the area of Davenport Boulevard. The responding officer said when he arrived on scene, he saw Rodriguez unresponsive behind the wheel with his foot on the brake, the car in gear, and the engine running. Concerned for the safety of the driver and others, the officer said he positioned his patrol car in front of Rodriguez's vehicle to prevent it from lunging forward into traffic. Reports show the officer then attempted to wake Rodriguez but was unsuccessful. The officer said he forced entry into the passenger side window so he could put the vehicle in park and remove the keys from the ignition. Once inside the vehicle, he reported observing Rodriguez briefly opening his eyes, going in and out of consciousness, was aware of the events unfolding. Reports show the car had 12 opened and consumed bottles of wine.
Yeesh.
Rodriguez was transported to the hospital, officials stated, where tests confirmed dangerously high levels of alcohol in his system. Officers reported Rodriguez does not have any prior DUI arrests, but has a history of malicious traffic citations. He blew he was charged with 1 count of DUI, indicating a blood alcohol content of 0.523.
He was more booze than blood.
Yeah.
That is the drunkest I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
I will tell you right now, it is amazing he is alive.
That's the drunkest I've ever heard of where somebody's lived.
Yes, that is a new record. That is a new standard on what is wrong with you. Please do not try and set a new one yourself. 0.523. Your blood is more wine than blood at that time. That is outrageous.
That's crazy.
All right. My story today, we're going to Italy. This is actually a developing situation. No joke. This is a developing situation in the country of Italy. On Monday, Italian soccer club Lazio fired its longtime falconer, Juan Bernabe, after the 56-year-old Spaniard posted photos on social media of himself following a penile implant surgery. The thing you can get, and he was proud of his. He showed pictures on social media. In a statement, Lazio said, "We and the historic symbol of the eagle can no longer be associated with a person who, with his behavior, has made the continuation of any relationship impossible." As a result of Bernabe's firing, the club's eagle, Olympia, will not fly at upcoming matches.
Jeez.
Bernabe had been with the club since 2010, and in a video so he gave an interview to a Spanish newspaper explaining his surgery. And that he's very proud of his surgery. Essentially, he likes likes the way that it makes his equipment work now. And
well, I hope.
Yes, and then there were pictures. Bernabe appears to have no regrets about posting the photos, saying, quote, "My conscience is fine. I only publicize this to inform people about the surgery. For me, nudity is normal because I grew up in a naturist family and with an open mind. I don't understand what my photo has to do with pornography." So there's an update to this story that is ongoing. He has refused to accept his dismissal from the club and has barricaded himself in their training center.
What?
He has apologized on social media saying he is, quote, "not a bleepy person," and, quote, "in life, everyone makes mistakes." He is scheduled to meet the president of the club tomorrow. The Lazio president has given a rambling interview on Italian radio during which he has suggested that the Falconers should be committed and has also said, and I quote, "Better a penis than a Roman salute? That's not how it works at my house." This is all real. Also, Lazio is like the official club of fascists. I don't know how much you know about fascism. We don't do a lot of politics on this radio program. But if you've taken a history class, fascism is bad.
Yes.
And Lazio is like the fascist club. Like this guy, Bernabe, had previously been suspended by Lazio for doing a chant in honor of Benito Mussolini with a group of fans and doing a fascist salute. At the time of his suspension, he admitted to the chants and said he admires both Mussolini and Francisco Franco and that he is proud of what he has done. And he's also proud of his new penis implant. All right, who wins today?
I don't know.
I think it's got to be the penis falconer. Like, it's got to be that guy.
Yeah.
Battle of the Bulge, says Paul.
I feel like any other day, the highest BAC we've ever seen would have won.
Yes. On some days, yes, that would have gotten the win. But no, that guy just went super hard on some wine. This guy also went super hard, I guess.
Yeah, I get that takes.
Yeah.
I think it overtakes.
I think it might.
Like
the fact
the developing ongoing situation.
It is an ongoing story. He has locked himself inside the grounds. This is a Serie A club. Like you could watch Lazio's matches on Paramount Plus. They're a big club in Italy. And they are. Like all the fascists root for Lazio. Like, oh, are you a Lazio fan? Oh, then you're a fascist. Yes, that is how it works. Imagine if American sports had a team like that. Like, oh, they do. It's the New York Yankees. Anyway, rim shot. Let's get to a break. That's our new winner. The Falconer, the proud PP possession, as Trevor puts it in the YouTube live chat, is our winner. Somehow Tim Fitzgerald's got to follow that next on 580 Sports Talk. We go to Manhattan on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline, and we're joined by the great Tim Fitzgerald, publisher of GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, for what we call the Wildcat Wrap-Up here on 580 Sports Talk. You can read Fitz and his outstanding staff at GoPowerCat.com. Become a VIP subscriber today. You can also follow Fitz on Twitter at LifeOfFitz. I got to say, Fitz, you kind of helped reframe last night's K-State loss for me a little bit with your daily delivery over at GoPowerCat.com today. Did it feel to you like, with the way that Jerome Tang managed that game and managed some of the playing time, that last night maybe represented a pivot towards an eye to the future for Kansas State and maybe admitting that this season's not going to be what anybody wanted it to be?
Right. I mean, I sense finally acceptance for his NIL transfer portal plan not working. It's obvious it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked at other places too. This isn't isolated to Kansas State. Who would have thought hiring, people that just want the top bid wouldn't build a cohesive team? Huh. And it hasn't. It's not doing it for anyone, most anyone that is attempting to do it. And so he admitted after the game, I'm leaning into the guys that are willing to pay the price, who want to help this program build for the future. And whether that's a senior, like a Coleman Hawkins or a Max Jones, or an underclassman who hasn't played a lot, like Moby or David Castillo, who was on the floor at the end of the game. And I see people saying, why was he on the floor at the end of the game? We need experience. Folks, you got to decide what you want. Are you wanting the future, or do you just want to win? And I know a win is like a short-term high, and it would have been great, but it doesn't do what you want long-term. And that's start worrying about next year's team, the year after that. And the reality that this NIL plan doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And you can have NIL plans, you can have portal players, but you need to put them in with the structure of a program that's pre-existing. You can't do this every year. And I think he's come to realize that. I think fans need to embrace that this is now about the future. And some dudes are going to play that may not help in that moment, but those moments that he's in the game will help for the future. And I'm glad Jerome Tang shifted that gear.
I want to ask about Castillo in particular because he led K-State in plus-minus last night. The Cats plus 11 while Castillo was on the floor, and he did get those late-game point guard minutes. And look, he's not as fast as Doug McDaniel, and the highs for a freshman like Castillo aren't going to be as high as the imagined highs or the hoped-for highs that you would have gotten from an experienced guy like Doug. But what can David Castillo bring to the team, and where do you see the growth potential for him in the short term if he gets more of these opportunities?
He's just a culture guy. I mean, he does things right. He's always done it right. He's from great coaching with Clint Stewart, and he's a natural leader. And there's so much more he can offer. This dude's in a horrific shooting slump, which is why people are wondering where he's on the court. Well, I think Jerome Tang's just said, yeah, we know he can shoot it a lot better. I think someone posted he's missed 27 straight threes, which is outrageous because he's a good three-point shooter. But I think he's just caught in the whole, bad mojo right now around the program. But he's a guy that can lead you out of that bad mojo. And I've got confidence in him. I think the coaches have confidence in him. And he's going to get a lot more minutes. Doug's going to continue to play. If Doug's going to do the right things off the court, which apparently he's doing right now, he's going to play. But all of you clamoring for Michaela Britz or anyone else to get playing time, Jerome Tang just told you after the game who's playing and why they're playing. To come to the inverse of that shouldn't be challenging. Listen to what he said, and you'll understand. If they're not bought in, they're not getting on the court. And I'm so happy he's come to that.
What's the vision for Moby Ike Garuka? Because he seems to me like the guy who's like the perfect example of he's being rewarded for what he's doing behind the scenes. Because right now he's the first guy off. He's gone from being a guy we weren't even talking about as being a possible rotation piece to being the first guy off the bench. And that's got to be a reward for what we're not seeing, for what's happening in the Ice family basketball training facility on a daily basis. But what's the vision for what he can be as a player? Because right now, he's not really giving K-State a whole lot in the way of production. Athletically, there's something there. He's got some interesting size and leaping ability and athleticism. But what is the vision for the kind of player that he can be?
I think he's a player that fits the prior Baylor mold. Just a bunch of really athletic guys who have learned how to play basketball as a group. And then, eventually we saw Scott Drew add maybe a higher recruit to that mix and then a higher recruit, and it elevated him up. But I think Jerome Tang's realized I got to go back to what we know works. Got to get a bunch of dudes who are invested in being good basketball players, being a team and being at Kansas State, because this plan didn't work. He is one of those. And plus, a little added bonus to him is if the NCAA gives in on this court ruling and says junior college years don't count, you got him for another year. He's a freshman too. And I think that's probably part of the plan here is he's going to be around. He's doing things right. And let's see if we can turn him into a pretty good player because he makes things happen. I mean, he doesn't score, but he can rebound and defend and jump, and he gets on the floor, and that sets the tone for everyone else. And I think that tone really helped the team. I thought they were so much more engaged in this game, even though they lost, even though they didn't score in the last 5 minutes and 50 seconds of the contest, even though it wasn't always pretty, they took it to the wire. And folks, you got to quit wanting changes and then be unhappy, even though a clear change was taken and progress was shown through it, even though it wasn't quite enough progress for you.
Tim Fitzgerald is our guest at GoPowerCat.com. He joins us every Wednesday on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline for the Wildcat Wrap-Up, talking all things K-State. Again, you can find Fitz's work at GoPowerCat.com. Him and his talented staff do an outstanding job covering the Cats from top to bottom there. You can also follow Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. You know, Fitz, there's a version of this season where K-State gets a shot to go at the end of the Liberty game, and Bennett Sturts doesn't make that three in the Drake game, and Doug McDaniel's floater goes in the TCU game, and last night's game could very easily have gone in their direction. There have been some close games. The Cincinnati game is really the only exception, a close game that did go K-State's way, but they've struggled in the close ones this year. Why do you think that is? What do you think this team has not had that has kept them from getting over the hump in this close game? And maybe we'd be in the same space talking about, the mojo's not great, or this team doesn't really fit, or it's not a great collection of players together as a team, but they'd have a shinier record at least if they could close games a little better.
Yeah, you're right. Let me put this in scientific terms. What I believe they're lacking, and they lacked last year, was a dude with giant testicles that wants to get things done. That just says, I'm going to go win this game. That was Marquise Noel. And that was Keontae Johnson. They had two. Now they don't really have anyone who, look, last two seasons, they've had guys that want to take the last shot. Tyler Perry loved to take the last shot. Doug McDaniel loves it. We saw David Castillo take it. And it's not working. This isn't working. And notice I just listed every primary ball handler that was on the court. Why in God's name is their final play always point guard, go throw it up? They've got to figure that out because that doesn't work. I mean, throwing the ball at the rim and praying isn't a way to consistently win games. Getting a good shot, having someone who can make a shot is the right formula.
We're joined by Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com here on 580 Sports Talk. And Tim, switching over to the women, they continue to just blow out their opponents. Do you think that the opponents they've faced so far in the Big 12 are the reason why they're stuck at 11, in that 10 to 12 range in the latest AP polls where they're not getting into the top 10?
That's a good question. Maybe, but Utah was playing pretty good basketball. So I don't know. Honestly, it might be because of what happened last year. They floated up, and then we saw the injury to Lee, and they really struggled up there. And also, we're not seeing the number of upsets that we saw a year ago. Remember when all of a sudden all the women's teams, the top teams, were starting to lose, and we were like, this doesn't happen in the women's game. And we're kind of back to a lot of the top programs holding form, or the voters aren't overreacting to a loss if they're a really good team. Men's and women's basketball are different sports. They really are. The teams are built differently. The rosters are built differently. And the separation between top and the middle is a lot greater in women's basketball in terms of teams. So I think we're just seeing less volatility in the women's pool than the men's pool, and certainly less volatility in the women's pool from last year because there were a lot of upsets that I think was shown at the end of the year that the voters overreacted to.
Just one more question for Tim Fitzgerald, GoPowerCat.com, joining us for the Wildcat Wrap-Up here on 580 Sports Talk. And I want to pivot to the gridiron real quick as the transfer portal remains open and K-State continues to make additions. Since we spoke last, Caleb Medford, transfer wide receiver from New Mexico, committed to K-State. It's part of an overhauling of the wide receiver room. A lot of guys departing that room, so K-State's gone portaling to bring in guys. Caleb Medford is just one of a group that includes Jaron Bradley from Boston College and Jerron Tibbs from Purdue. How do you think that wide receiver group shakes out, and how much production are they going to be looking for from this transfer class vis-a-vis how much they might be looking for from guys who are back?
I feel like I've answered this question 3 straight years, and the first 2 times I was really wrong. We can all agree that the wide receiver room as a totality hasn't been nearly as productive as Kansas State football needs. And it's an issue holding them back. So I think there was a sense, let's just go get some guys that honestly we think will fit into that room, fit into our roster, and hopefully will make us better. But I don't know if it'll work. I just don't know. That keeping Jace Brown was huge in the fact that he is a proven commodity. He's the best go-to guy they've had, I'd say, since Tyler Lockett, and they need to get him a little even more involved. But they need some guys to step up, whether they're returning players or these new portal guys coming in. I'm going to be really honest here. I can see how players in that locker room at the receiver position be upset that they brought in 3 people. But no one is ascending to playing time. You have to earn that playing time. And even though you've been loyal and stuck around, you haven't earned the playing time, obviously, because you haven't been playing. So they're going to bring in people that can push you to that. And if you don't rise to the occasion, maybe they will. They brought in more competition, and typically competition makes a room better. We'll see if it works for K-State football at receiver.
Tim Fitzgerald covers the Cats at GoPowerCat.com and joins us every Wednesday for the Wildcat Wrap-Up here on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz, always a pleasure. Always appreciate your insight. We'll look forward to doing it again next week.
Thank you, boys. Good to talk to you.
That is Tim Fitzgerald. We'll take a timeout, come back, wrap up this 4 o'clock hour, 580 Sports Talk. Our thanks once again to Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com for joining us on the program today. Our thanks to you for being with us. Thanks to those watching and commenting in the live chat on our YouTube stream, 580 Sports Talk. Those of you texting the program, 785-272-9429. Remember that phone number, just a heads up. Coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, we're going to break down the first big game of the Big 12 season. KU at Iowa State tonight at Hilton Coliseum. They'll tell you what to expect from tonight's matchup. Really looking forward to seeing this one tonight. Gonna have to sprint home to see tip-off. It is a 6 o'clock tip.
Yeah, I did not realize it was the early one on ESPN.
Yeah, early game tonight on ESPN. So hurry home to watch the Jayhawks and the Cyclones tonight. We'll break that down. Also, a thought about K-State basketball and that they're not the only team who went big on NIL, who bet big on a big transfer class, a well-compensated transfer class, and so far have come up snake eyes. Plus, our 580 Sports Talk headlines all coming up. Right now, remember that phone number, 785-272-9429? I want caller number 3. That number, I'm going to give you 4 tickets to see K-State women's basketball tomorrow night, a 6:30 tip-off at Bramlage Coliseum against Arizona. Caller number 3 to 785-272-9429. Going to see the 11th ranked women's team in the country in Big 12 play tomorrow night. That's next. Coming up, 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. Third and final hour of 580 Sports Talk on a Wednesday afternoon in the capital city. Thank you so much for being with us, spending part of your Wednesday with us here on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online worldwide at 580WIBW.com. And a hello to everyone watching us in living color on the YouTube video stream. Our YouTube channel is 580 Sports Talk. You can also watch us on Facebook at WIBW News. I'm Dan Lucero. Spencer Dupuis is with me. Brendan Dworzynski's getting ready to start up some Washburn basketball. He'll be live over on our sister station, your exclusive home of the Ichabods, Country 106.9, in about 8 minutes or so to start pregame coverage as the Ichabod men and women welcome Emporia State to Lee Arena, the Turnpike Tussle basketball edition. Both Washburn's men and women going for sweeps of the Hornets this season. And, of course, the Washburn men playing their first game as the number 1 ranked team in America. So that coverage will be, again, over on Country 106.9. Tip-off of the women's game at 5:30 and the men's game to follow. So it's me and Spencer for the final hour. We got some headlines. We're going to preview KU Iowa State tonight. That line has moved in Iowa State's direction since the start of the program. I can tell you that up at Prairie Band Sportsbook. We'll also talk about K-State. The spot they find themselves in is not an unfamiliar one because there are other programs that took losses last night that also find themselves in the same situation they found themselves in. But I want to make sure that we point the finger in the right direction because I think we blame an idea for the reason that a transfer doesn't work out or the reason that a team full of transfers has underachieved or disappointed. We blame the concept of transfer. We blame the concept of NIL. And I think you're pointing the finger in the wrong place. And I want to hammer on that point a little bit as we go along. So we'll get into that a little bit more as well. Your comments, your questions, they are encouraged. They are invited. Jump into the YouTube live chat. If you're watching the show right now on our YouTube stream, 580 Sports Talk, again, is the name of that channel. Live chat is open. We'd love to hear from you throughout the show and interacting with us and with your fellow listeners. You can also text the program. 785-272-9429 is the text line. That is 785-272-9429. The YouTube commenters have pointed out, before we get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines, what is wrong with you lately has been, what's a delicate way to put it? It's been a lot of male genitalia talk on the program lately. And look, we don't intend to do that. And then you find a what is wrong with you story about the guy who is is it right to call the guy the falconer if his bird is an eagle? To say he's a falconer?
I don't know.
I don't know. Can falconers fly eagles? I don't know. It's like a square rectangle situation. I don't know. Anyway, and you run into a guy who got fired from his cushy job as the official falconer for an Italian soccer team because he posted pictures of his genitals that had been surgically enhanced on the internet for everyone to see. And look, we're not going to use that story in What Is Wrong With You. I mean, we're not made of stone here. We're not going to do that story. So we've had that story, and then we had and it beat a story about a police officer who was watching pornography while driving. And then, of course, last week's winner was the snowman that was male, visibly anatomically correct. And then Tim Fitzgerald says the word testicles in his email, in his conversation with us in the Wildcat Wrap-Up. So, yeah, it's been a lot of that moving forward. And I want to be clear. That's not like our intent. We are, we welcome our audience with or without male genitalia, male chromosomes. We do. We appreciate you being with us. But yeah, lately there have been a spate of male genitalia related stories and dialogue.
Unfortunately, the one I have for tomorrow assumes that in there. It doesn't specifically state it, but it assumes it. So
text from the 913 asks, what about those with both? And look, not here to judge. I'm not looking at anybody's pants. There's no barrier to entry here. 580 Sports Talk, not genitalia related or otherwise. There is no barrier to entry. All are welcome. All are ball knowers. Pause. And we appreciate you being here no matter what. So, but I understand why you might have asked.
All right, can we change topic now?
Yeah, let's
All
do
right,
it.
I got a question for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
It was involving your TV watching last night.
Okay, sure.
How was Tiger?
So
I didn't watch.
Yeah, TGL was last night 2. Tigers team got waxed.
Oh,
so
hate to see it.
Yeah, tough night, tough debut for Jupiter Lynx in the TGL. They got smoked by Los Angeles Golf Club. Anyhow, two things. There's something very funny happening with the golf simulator right now is that the guys have like no perception of how hard they need to hit a shot. And they keep like over clubbing on these super simple wedge approach shots, either over or under clubbing. Like Tiger hit one like over the green and into the water, and his son was there and couldn't stop laughing at him. So that was really funny. Also, Kevin Kisner, Tiger's teammate, had a short approach shot. So they've got like an artificial green behind where they hit the ball. And there's a sand trap, like terrible space to be. You have the sand trap right next to the green and you short-sided yourself because the pin is on that side real close to the green. Like there's no good way to hit that shot.
Yeah.
You've got a problem if you've got to hit that shot. Kevin Kisner tried to hit that shot and he rang it off the flagstick. Like line drive, he hit it so thin. And he hit a line drive sand shot off the flagstick. And, like, I've never seen Tiger Woods laugh like that before. Like, he was doubled over laughing. Everybody was. And two things there. Number one, that is, like, a legitimately funny thing, and it should be treated as such. But also, like, if you're selling this as sports competition, like, then you have to sell me that somebody cares about winning or losing. And what I have not seen is anybody giving a damn about whether their team wins or loses. They're just having a good time playing with the big golf simulator.
Good. I'm glad.
And, you know, I'm sure they're having a lot of fun and being compensated handsomely. And it looks like it might be a fun thing to be at. I just don't know about the viability of it as a television product unless I get to play. Like, I want to play the giant golf simulator.
Speaking of people getting to do things on ESPN, did you see that virtual reality Dan Orlovsky was doing on NFL Live yesterday that made its rounds on social media?
I did not know.
They were talking about Jaden Daniels, and he does this virtual reality thing, and he was literally playing the game in virtual reality from the playoffs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, I did not see that.
Apparently you can pay a bunch of money and buy that and play it yourself.
Oh.
Like thousands and thousands of dollars.
That's you know what that sounds like? That sounds like a ruined living room. That sounds like I would buy something and something I would buy and put on the little VR headset. And the next thing I know, I've stepped on one of my son's like 1,000 piano toys. That's a slight exaggeration, but my son has something in the neighborhood of like half a dozen toys that are essentially like pianos, keyboards. And I step on one of those and crack my ankle.
Yeah.
That's what that sounds like to me. I'm sure it sells. Anyhow, let's get into some headlines, shall we? Let's do some 580 Sports Talk headlines as we get things rolling in this 5 o'clock hour.
I just threw a bunch in there too.
We're going to start with the Washburn Ichabod's, who are the number one team in America, verified by the Division II men's basketball top 25 poll yesterday. And today, 4 members of the Ichabod's were named to the Bevo Francis Award watch list for the top player in sub-Division I men's college basketball. So that includes Division II, Division III, the NAIA, the NCCAA, and this is a new one on me, the USCAA, the United States Collegiate Athletic Association.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, this is brand new to me. So basically, not the NJCAA, interestingly enough, but the USCAA also includes 2-year schools. Man, this would be a really fun one to do with Brendan because we always have a good time looking at these fake schools or these fake sounding schools. Atlantis University. Get out of my face. Come on. That's not real. Penn State Altoona.
I've driven by that before.
The Fighting Scots of Edinburgh. That's a Division II school. They're playing Bryant and Stratton, Cleveland.
Did you say Edinburgh?
Edinburgh, yeah.
Yeah, they're in the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference.
Yes, the PSAC, yes. Sub-Division I Men's Basketball Player of the Year, the Bevo Francis Award, and 4 members of the Ichabods were named to the watch list, including seniors Jacob Hanna and Andrew Orr, and sophomores Jack Batchelor and Braden Shorter. Shorter right now is leading scorer for the Ichabods at 16.5 points a game, a high-volume 41% three-point shooter. Absolute stud. When he gets rolling, when he gets on a heater, it is like he could not miss from anywhere on the court. He is something to watch. Jacob Hanna, the transfer from Illinois Springfield, former Mays Eagle, has been terrific this year for the Ichabods, averaging 15 points, 6 boards. Andrew Orr, the senior, went over 1,000 career points this year. He's up around 14 points a game. And Jack Batchelor, of course, former Washington Rural Junior Blue, at 13 points per game. So 4 members of the Ichabods making the top 100 list. And again, these are players below Division I, but it's like everything except the NJCAA. So there's a lot of schools that are in this consideration, and Washburn has 4 players on the list. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think any other school has 4 players on this list. So pretty cool deal. Maybe Alabama Huntsville. They seem to have 3, it looks like. 3's not 4. Sorry. So great honor for Washburn, 4 of their 5 starters named to the top 100 sub-Division I men's basketball players in the country. Pretty cool deal. Anyway, next headline, Spencer.
Yeah, I got a bunch of NFL interviews, and one particularly is Chiefs related, not necessarily coaching interview here. Titans have now completed an in-person interview with Chiefs assistant GM Mike Borgonzi. Is that how you say it?
Mm-hmm.
For their general manager job. So another front office guy from the Chiefs could be out the door after who was it? Their player personnel guy went to Carolina. Who am I thinking of?
Tillis, I think.
Brent Tillis.
Yeah, Brant Tillis. That was last year. He became the executive VP of football ops with the Panthers. Yeah, Mike Borgonzi has I think he interviewed with the Jets as well. I think he had a conversation with the Jets. So he is a man in demand, and I'd be pretty surprised at this point if he doesn't get one of those vacancies to be a general manager, get the opportunity to run his own club.
But that's what happens when your team's as successful as the Chiefs.
Right. Brain drain, essentially. Yeah.
Other coaching, or now on to coaching, the Bears have interviewed Arthur Smith for their head coaching job. Quite interesting there.
I think Arthur Smith is a good offensive coordinator, and I think that's exactly what he is, and I do not think he should be a head coach again. It would be very surprising if he got another opportunity to be a head coach this soon. Wasn't that long ago that he failed in Atlanta.
Well, and I mean, there's not much to go off. I think just the fact that he was a head coach before might be the reason, he's got the experience, because he didn't really have much to go on. I mean, you had Russell Wilson, Justin Fields / Russell Wilson there in Pittsburgh this year.
Mm-hmm.
Not great. Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores will interview with the Jets and Jaguars on Friday, the Bears on Saturday. So the Bears are turning over every leaf possible. The Falcons have completed an interview with former Jets interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich for their DC position. And the Jets completed an interview with Broncos defensive coordinator Vance Joseph for their head coaching position.
Retreads, and more retreads.
Yes.
We talked about Brian Flores yesterday. I cannot imagine that he gets a second head coaching job after how, particularly with a team with a young quarterback, given that the relationship was so poor between Flores and Tua Tagovailoa. And I've read reports that Flores is understanding of why things went wrong in his first go around as a head coach, and maybe that's true, but still, I wouldn't leave that to chance if I were, say, the Bears.
Yeah,
that would not be the route I would want to go. And Vance Joseph obviously had a great year with that Bronco defense. I saw what that was as a head coach. Like, I don't know why you would look at that and say, "Oh yeah, that's what I want to do." It wasn't that he was bad at the X's and O's stuff. Like, some guys are just really good coordinators. Wade Phillips was a really good defensive coordinator. Norv Turner was a really good offensive coordinator. Some guys are just meant to be that. and not meant to wear the big hat and sit in the big chair. And there's no shame in that. You'd be very handsomely compensated, have a long career in the game as a really good OC or a really good DC. But it also goes to show you how limited the imagination of teams in the NFL is right now if they're looking towards retreads. Because I guess you look at some of the recent track record of the first-time head coaches hasn't worked out real well. Brian Callahan in Tennessee didn't go great. Dave Canales, more downs than ups in his first year at Carolina. So maybe teams in this hiring cycle are thinking, let's go find some retreads. But it's not real inspiring. Like, if you're a Jet fan and you hear, hey, we interviewed Vance Joseph, like, are you psyched?
No.
I can't imagine you would be, right?
I think there's only a couple people I'd be psyched for. Ben Johnson.
Yeah, Ben Johnson's like the sexy name.
And I guess Aaron Glenn right behind him. I don't really know who's the second guy. Like, I don't know, or like, who else would you be excited for? I mean, maybe Cliff Kingsbury if he's going to get any retread. Like, I
wouldn't hire him.
Yeah, but what he's helped the scheme and the offense. I don't know. That's the only thing that was exciting this year, right?
Sure.
Their offense was exciting.
Yeah, like last year, Ben Johnson was an exciting name, and they withdrew his name. Like Mike McDonald was an exciting name as the first-time head coach, and Seattle hired him. And I mean, they won 10 games, they didn't make the playoffs, but they had the same record as the Broncos. Like they in the AFC, maybe they would have made the playoffs. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. It's very strange that there don't seem to be a lot of new coaching candidates. But again, failure of imagination.
Well, there's just, to me, it's been a lot of failures for first, like, new guys.
Yeah, but Arthur Smith was the first-time head coach that failed, and so is Brian Flores, and so is Vance Joseph, and they didn't fail a little bit either. Those guys were spectacular failures.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think any of those guys are going to get hired.
One of the Kubiak sons going to get. Like, I thought they were supposed to be the next.
That's interesting. It's Clint Kubiak, who is the OC with the Saints, right? He's really in demand. The Browns have interviewed him to be their new OC. The Seahawks have interviewed him to be their new OC. As a Seahawks fan, I'd be thrilled if they hired Clint Kubiak.
Who's the other Kubiak with the 49ers?
That is also begins with a K, because all of Gary Kubiak's kids have names that start with K.
Yeah.
Clay. Yeah. Clay is the OC with the 49ers.
I think he just officially got that title.
Yes, he did.
This year.
Like a week ago.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe he's a guy in the future that gets that, he's from the Shanahan tree sort of.
I think that's what everybody's waiting for, right? That next guy from the Shanahan McVay, like, because that was all the hype, right?
Maybe Clint Kubiak's that guy. Because Clint's farther along in his coaching career, and he's been an OC in multiple spots. He was the OC in Minnesota in 2021. He was the OC for the Saints this past season. He's been around. I'm a little surprised there's not more head coaching buzz for him. Maybe he needs one more offensive coordinator stop. I don't know.
I just feel like that's where a lot of the young head coaching buzz has been in the last 8 years.
I just don't understand why Gary Kubiak gave all his kids K names. He loves alliteration. Clay, Clint, and Klein.
Who said that it was his decision?
Yeah, could have been his wife. That's very true. I don't know the mom's name. Maybe it's a K name too. Who can say? Anyway, let's move on with our 580 Sports Talk headlines. Get into these real quick from the college ranks. A couple of stories about college quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers today, the quarterback at the University of Texas, declared for the 2025 NFL draft. I mean, you might as well, because either you're a mid-round draft pick this year or you get benched for Arch Manning next year.
Yeah.
And I guess he could have maybe pursued the portal in the same way that Carson Beck did.
I thought there was those rumors, right?
There were, but I think Ewers probably is surveying the field and saying, okay, Carson Beck's not in the draft. Drew Aller's not in the draft. There are teams desperate to take quarterback. Why not Quinn Ewers? Why not me? Yeah. Why not me? Because, like, the draftable quarterbacks for 2025 right now, it's Shador, and it gets grim after that. I'm going to pull up a list here. It was grim before we knew Aller and Beck were coming back, because I don't think either of those guys is particularly impressive as a prospect. No. Yeah. But, like, right now, this is Pro Football Focus. Pro Football Focus's number one ranked quarterback on their draft board is Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe and Cameron Ward are 1-2, and then Shedeur. PFF not real high on Shedeur Sanders, which is interesting. And then their number 4 quarterback on the board is Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. Like, if you're Quinn Ewers, don't you think you could maybe crack the top 3 quarterbacks drafted? And, I mean, there might not be 3 drafted in the first round this year, but if you're one of the top 3 quarterbacks drafted, that would give you an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
You're top 100 pick. I think being a top 100 pick, paying better than anything on the portal, you may as well go pro now. May as well strike while the iron is hot. Because the alternative is you come back to Texas, you are not playing next year. They are turning the keys over to Arch Manning. There is no question about that. So Quinn Ewers is returning or not returning and will declare for the NFL draft. Also, apparently not returning, Cam Rising, who is no longer listed on the Utah football roster. Cam Rising, also a former Longhorn, began his career at Texas in 2018. Still has a year of eligibility remaining, despite only having played 3 games the last 2 seasons. Missed all of 2023 with a knee injury, appeared in only 3 games last year. The Utes added a transfer quarterback, Devin Dampier from New Mexico. He's really good. I don't know how much New Mexico football y'all watched in 2024, and I can't say I was eating the Lobo tape, but I did see some Devin Dampier highlights, and I think he's really good. Dual threat guy. His offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, is coming with him to Utah because Kyle Whittingham needed a new OC. So Dampier is going to be the guy in Salt Lake City in the fall of 2025. And Kyle Whittingham, the Utah coach, told reporters on Tuesday, quote, "I've talked to Cam a few times, but that's really up to Cam when he wants to divulge what his plan is. We've certainly had communication, and you don't see him on the roster right now, so that should tell you some things there." So Utah's ready to move on. Cam Rising ready to start going pro in something other than sports. I think it might be time.
Or is he going to put his? I can't. I don't think it's. Is the window over? He can't put his name in the portal if the window's over.
I guess I don't know how that works. Like, there's the spring portal.
Yeah, you have to wait until the spring.
He
portal.
could wait and see.
I don't know, but yeah, he's going to go back some fries.
Nah, man, like UPS is hiring, right?
State Farm is hiring
Indeed.
insurance agents.
You need Indeed, Cam Rising. You need Indeed.
You need to be like that guy. Who's that player? Did you see that one that went viral where the guy put his LinkedIn and he made a big graphic?
Yeah, like an I'm declaring for the draft graphic, except it was I'm declaring that I'm not playing football anymore and I need a job. Yeah, that was pretty good. That was well done. That'll do it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines. When we come back, KU and Iowa State tonight, a top 10 battle in the Big 12. We're going to get to that after this timeout. But before we get there, a word for my friends at Great Life here in Topeka. The roads are cleared. The weather's still cold. It might not be fun to exercise outside right now, but it's always good temperature inside one of the 8 training facilities that Great Life members have to choose from, with lots of great facilities, gleaming equipment, your opportunity to get in shape, to get your cardio in, to get your swole on, and sign up for some classes, boxing, taekwondo, spin, whatever you can think of. Great Life's got it. Go to greatlifetopeka.com, peruse all of the amenities that those 8 fitness centers have to offer, and become a member today. Again, greatlifetopeka.com. More 580 Sports Talk coming up after this. 5:33 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan and Spencer with you. 27 minutes from now, give or take, tip-off at Hilton Coliseum. This is the game that feels like the first big game on the schedule this year in the Big 12. And some of that is because, well, a league we thought would be really deep has kind of ended up being top-heavy at the end. When you look at the Big 12, you got 3 teams still unbeaten in league play, and there aren't any surprises in the group. Arizona went to 5-0 in the league. They crushed Baylor last night. They came out firing at McHale and really dominated Baylor for 40 minutes. That was an impressive performance. Arizona slip started, but they are now 11-5 overall, 5-0 in the conference, and they should be in the top 25 next week. I know Baylor was ranked this week. Just give Arizona's Baylor spot. Keep it moving. Be on the fringes of it either. Right now, they look like one of the. I'd put them in my top 20 right now on the balance of their current form. They're starting to find their identity. And they're 5-0, top of the league right now. Iowa State, Houston, both perfect, 4-0 in league play. Then you have KU and West Virginia at 3-1. West Virginia, I guess, is a surprise. Certainly, nobody expected they would go to Allen Fieldhouse and win in the conference opener for both teams. They're 3-1 in the conference, same record as Kansas. Tech, UCF, Baylor, 3-2. TCU's 2-2. And nobody really worth discussing after that. BYU's 2-3, but it's been a bumpy ride getting there. And then after that, Utah, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, Kansas State each have a conference win. Cincy and Colorado are both 0-4. So we've ended up with a top-heavy league. And the result of that is that you don't have as many of the marquee games. Like last night, there were 4 huge SEC games. There were 3 games that were a ranked team versus a ranked team in the SEC. And then 4th game with Florida getting beat by Mizzou. Mizzou off the top rope. And they might sneak into the top 25. They're playing good ball for Dennis Gates, 14-3. So when we do have a ranked versus ranked matchup in the Big 12, it feels big. We just aren't in track to have many of those. We actually get 2 of them tonight. Two games that feel big. West Virginia is at Houston, though I have a feeling that this will probably expose West Virginia a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
So we've got Iowa State and Kansas tonight. And this is the best offensive team that TJ Otzelberger has had at Iowa State. But what they will not have tonight is their best 3-point shooter. Milan Momcilovic suffered an injury to his non-shooting hand at practice yesterday, and he's going to miss 5 to 6 weeks. That is a huge blow to the Cyclones. Momcilovic was shooting 47% from behind the arc. One of 5 guys in double figures. So it's not like they can't score without him on the floor, but he's the guy you got to worry about stretching the floor. He's the guy you have to worry about on offensive rebounds and kickouts. And he's certainly the guy that you have to guard if he's in the corner that creates space for the guards, Jones, Curtis Jones, Keyshawn Gilbert, and Taman Lipsey to operate within. So that's a huge loss for Iowa State. They've got to navigate a big chunk of their schedule without him. That certainly makes this matchup to me more interesting because it makes the Cyclones a little less potent on offense. And this is a game where KU comes in riding their best stretch of defense in conference play over a 3-game spell in the Bill Self era. So what kind of game are we going to see tonight? I guess is the big question. Because if KU has truly sort of embraced this idea that they're an elite defensive team, which they have played like since the West Virginia loss, they might be able to drag this game to hell. They might be able to turn this game into a fist fight. And there's irony in that because that's sort of what you associate Iowa State basketball with being, right?
Yeah.
Like defense first, low scoring, low possession. We're going to outwork you on the defensive end. We're going to make you play badly, and that's how we're going to beat you. Now KU might be that kind of a team because their best lineup defensively is not a great offensive lineup. So can KU make Iowa State without Momcilovic play bad and keep their best defensive 5 on the floor, or are they going to have to chase points and get in a bit of a shootout with Iowa State at Hilton Coliseum? It seems as though our friends in the desert are suspecting that it will be more of a high-scoring affair. According to Prairie Bank Casino in Mayetta, Kansas is a 5.5-point underdog. That line sat at 5 most of the day and moved to 5.5, even after the Momcilovic injury news within the last hour or two. The total is 143.5 points. I cannot tell you how much I love the under. That is the blood bank, bet your firstborn on it, lock of the week from Dan Lucero tonight. I love the under in this game. I do think it's going to be like a 67-65 kind of basketball game, because I think right now the best version of KU is a team that leans on defense heavier than their offense. And without Momcilovic, I think Iowa State might lean into that a little bit as well. So I think you're going to get low possessions, low score. It's winnable for Kansas. It's just hard to pick anybody at Hilton Coliseum playing a good Iowa State team. And this is not only a good Iowa State team, it might be their best of recent vintage. I'll take Kansas in the points, though. I'll take Kansas plus 5.5. You're giving me the hook, especially. I'll take Kansas plus 5.5. That what you're thinking too, Spence?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, you add the hook on there late, right?
Yeah. That came in. That came in late, and even that was even after the injury news, because that broke earlier today that Momcilovic can be out a while with. And they say an injury. We can assume it's a broken hand, but they didn't specify the nature of the injury to his left hand.
They don't got to do it.
No, they don't. They're
not the SEC.
No, not the SEC, not the NFL. They can. It's more like hockey.
Yeah.
Where yes, this player has a lower body injury. Yeah, we know. We saw his foot severed at the ankle by a skate. Lower body injury. His return to play is TBD.
Yeah.
It's infuriating if you're any kind of a hockey fan. You never know when your players are coming back. Anyhow, neither here nor there. So that's our lean tonight, that Kansas will cover 5.5, that it will be a low-scoring affair. Going to be tough to win at Hilton Coliseum. But do you know Bill Self's all-time record at Hilton by chance?
I do not.
I believe it is 14-6.
The odds are in his favor.
And the odds are usually in Bill Self's favor.
That's true.
That's why he's the Hall of Famer. Pretty impressive stuff. 6 o'clock tip. So if you're on your way home, don't speed or anything, but hopefully you DVR'd the start of it if you're going to be home a little late. ESPN2 is the network. We get Shulman and Billis tonight.
Ooh.
From Hilton Coliseum.
What's on the 2? I thought it was on the 1.
I don't know what ESPN proper has tonight.
I thought it was on the 1.
I maybe I'm reading wrong, but let me go and see what would be on. Oh, ESPN's got an NBA doubleheader tonight. Yeah, it is Wednesday after all. So they got Knicks, Sixers, and Warriors T-Wolves tonight on ESPN. That's what's coming up. So ESPN2, KU, and Iowa State. Take a quick timeout. We'll come back. A thought about K-State and the same boat that they find themselves in with some other programs who went all in on transfers and big NIL deals and have gone bust. We'll talk about that next on 580 Sports Talk. Score check from Lee Arena. Washburn-Ichabod women out to an early 16-9 lead over Emporia State as the Turnpike Tussle Hoops edition gets underway. Brendan Dworzinski's on the call of that right now over on our sister station, your home for the Ichabods, Country 106.9. Circling back to where we began with K-State basketball, lost a heartbreaker last night to Texas Tech, an eminently winnable basketball game that just got away because K-State did not score a single basket or even a single free throw for the final 5 minutes and 50 seconds of action. The loss drops K-State to 7-9. They're 1-4 in the Big 12. And that 1-4 is not a pretty 1-4 either, because they've lost to two of the worst teams in the conference in TCU and Oklahoma State. It was also not a good night for a couple of other programs who, like K-State, leaned into transfer portal classes and big NIL deals this past offseason to build their roster. Now, Arkansas did it out of necessity largely because they lost much of their roster, and John Calipari came in and brought some of his guys from Kentucky with him. Indiana had a head coach, an established head coach in Mike Woodson, who went big also in the portal. And both of those teams lost last night. Indiana got blown out at home by Illinois, and fans at Assembly Hall, the one in Bloomington, not the one in Champaign, were chanting "Fire Woodson" at the end of the game. Indiana's 13-5, by the way. K-State would kill to be 13-5 right now.
Yeah, they would.
But Indiana 13-5, 4-3 in the Big Ten. I haven't beaten anybody of note. Like, it's not a season going in the right direction. Arkansas lost to LSU last night. They'd been 0-3 in the SEC, but it was 0-3 against three ranked teams. And you could say, well, I mean, they're just not beating ranked teams. That's a tough schedule. LSU isn't within a country mile of the top 25 and beat Arkansas last night. And Arkansas is now 11-6 on the year. Now, Arkansas and Indiana are at least getting some star level production from some of their transfers. And I don't know, like, the specific financials on what everybody's making. It's always, he said, I heard this secondhand. No idea. I can't go to Spotrac and get, like, the list of how much everybody's getting from NIL deals and endorsements.
Yeah.
But you know who the stars are, and you can guess who's making the big bucks. Like, for Indiana, Miles Rice was the prize of their transfer class from Washington State. He's played some good ball. Omar Ballo, who got ejected from last night's game, has been a double-double machine. He's been about what you would have expected him to be for IU. And for Arkansas, I mean, Nelly Davis can't play anymore, which is weird. Like, Nelly Davis went from being like an awesome player at FAU to being just a guy at Arkansas. But
that's what happens. Like, that's literally what happens. You go, like, I get the transfer portal and stuff, but you send a guy to a Conference USA, whatever they are, American now, or are they still Conference USA? I think they're American.
I think they're American.
And then you send him to a power team. Like, what do you expect?
Well, who's not having that problem? His former running mate, Elijah Martin, who's averaging 16 a game for Florida.
I mean, okay.
So, like, it doesn't always happen, but, it's buyer beware, right?
Yeah.
Like, your point is not entirely out of line there. It is a bit buyer beware when you're coming up from a mid-major conference to a league like the SEC. Adu Thiero's been really good for Arkansas. He's been better than I would have expected that he would be. That's been a nice surprise. One of the Kentucky guys that came over with Coach Cal. But those guys are performing like studs, where K-State made 4 particularly big bets on the NIL stage. Like, I don't think Max and CJ Jones and Brendan Housen got particularly ample NIL deals. I don't believe those were like Godfather offers for those guys.
Yeah.
But the 4 big bets for K-State were Coleman Hawkins, Doug McDaniel, Achor, and Ugonna Onyenso. And the bang for the buck has absolutely not been there. Coleman Hawkins is a Scottie Pippen that is being asked to be a Michael Jordan. Hasn't worked. Doug McDaniel, too mercurial, too inconsistent. Achor's not even around anymore. No idea what happened there. In theory, great addition. In concept, he's not with the team. Didn't even make it to Big 12 play. Ugonna Onyenso is on and off the court. No idea what kind of minutes he's going to play. No idea what sort of contribution he's going to have. The problem with Onyenso is he can only play center. Well, David Gasson can really only play center right now because Coleman Hawkins can really only play the 4 right now, and you have to play Gasson. You have to. He's your best guy. You have to play him. So right now, he's your 5, and that kind of boxes Onyenso out. But anyway, those were the big additions, and you haven't gotten anything from them. This would be like if the Royals and their big spending spree last offseason, if they'd spent big money on Seth Lugo and he put up an ERA of 5, and they spent big money on Michael Wacha and he'd blown out his arm. Like, sometimes the money you spend is not good money.
Yeah.
NIL is not the boogeyman here. It is not NIL's fault. NIL is not the boogeyman. There are a lot of players in the country who are enjoying the fruits of their labor with regards to some ample NIL packages who are having really good seasons. And there are teams who are loaded with transfers who are playing winning basketball. West Virginia is an example in the Big 12. Kentucky is an example in the SEC. K-State made bad investments on the wrong players. That's it. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. It doesn't mean that NIL is inherently bad or that players that get big NIL deals suddenly stop caring or stop being good at basketball. K-State went all in and went bust on 4 guys that they needed to be good for this to work, or at least need to contribute, in Onyenso's case, to make the outlay of money worthwhile. And I think the Onyenso thing is a little bit unfortunate for his part, that who knew that David Gasson was going to be this essential? I think the vision for K-State was Onyenso at the 5 and Gasson off the bench. And you can't bring Gasson off the bench. He's too important.
Yeah.
He's too important to the team. So I kind of don't blame anyone for Ugonna Onyenso's off and on playing time there necessarily, at least from what we can know and what we can see. But the other 3 guys were flops. And Tim Fitzgerald talked about it with us, and if you missed that interview, it was in hour 2 of the show. Go back and watch it on the YouTube or tune in on the podcast on 580WIBW.com or on Spotify by searching 580 Sports Talk. And he said, look, K-State has come to the realization, it came early and it came painfully, you can't really do this. This is not the way to make a great team. You're going to have to develop. You're going to have to invest in guys who are invested from the start in your program. Doesn't mean transfers are bad. Doesn't mean NIL is bad. Means that K-State made bad investments. They make better investments, they'd have a better team. They didn't. That's why they're where they're at. And it's unfortunate, and it's hard to watch right now. But if they really do turn a corner moving forward and they start giving guys like David Castillo more playing time, that's going to be a version of K-State basketball that people can get behind, even if they don't do a lot of winning in the short term.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
One final break. The final word is next on 580 Sports Talk. Wrapping up and walking off this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk with a final word. Spencer Dupuis, hit me.
Yeah, not sure if I'll be on the show tomorrow because I got to work the early morning ag roundup starting at 5 a.m. But tomorrow will mark 1 year.
That's right.
That I'm at Alpha Media Topeka.
That's right.
And it's crazy.
You better be on the show. We got to celebrate, man. Maybe there'll be cake. I can't promise that there will be cake.
I don't think there'll be cake.
I shouldn't make promises that I can't follow through on. There'd be cake if I want there to be cake.
That's true.
I can buy a cake.
That is true. But excited for what the next year plus is going to hold. Obviously, trying to do more things is what they're trying to learn more things, do more things. That's what they tell you is the best thing to be, is well rounded. So happy to still be here talking sports.
We're happy to have you, Spencer. Final word for me. I think it's going to be a really good game tonight at Hilton Coliseum, and I do think it's going to be low scoring. I think this game's going to be like a knife fight in the mud. I think you're going to see two teams get after each other on defense, and we see a low scoring affair tonight at Hilton Coliseum. It's really tough to pick Kansas to win, but they are a mentally tough veteran team, and if anybody's going to go to Hilton Coliseum and walk out with a win over TJ Otzelberger's best team, it'd be these Jayhawks, particularly if they're able to bring the defensive intensity that they've brought since the calendar flipped to 2025. Can't wait to watch it. Gonna get on my horse and get down Huntoon Hill and get to my house, get the TV on, and watch the Jayhawks as they tip off in minutes from Hilton Coliseum on ESPN2. That'll do it for us today. We got 3 more hours of sports talk coming your way tomorrow from 3 to 6. I hope you will join us for those. CJ Moore, Rick Peterson, Mitch Holtis will all join us on tomorrow's show. For Brendan Dworzinski and Spencer Dupuis, I'm Dan Lucero. This was 580 Sports Talk. Good night.